Hello, Elton here. Now let's get started on my recovery profile. Every addict just starting into recovery needs to make an attempt at developing a recovery profile dialogue. This dialogue will be your starting point into addiction recovery, and it should have an outline of your journey through the rest of your recovery. It's very important that the addict gets started on the right issues. Your dialogue should start off with your beginning starting point into a very long recovery program set up by you. It's extremely easy for a person that has years under his or her belt to dictate how one is to stay sober and clean. On the other hand, it became easy for these people because they developed an intrapersonal suitable working program that internalized personal and private needs and wants. There is an old expression that states, "The needs of many is greater than the need of one." This may be true to a certain degree, but not for addiction recovery. I personally made it a point to try and find out what was it that attracted me to the drugs to begin with, what was so good about them. It really wasn't hard to figure it out. It was the drug high, the good feeling, that got me so interested. I started out kind of slow with the booze, until I found out that popping a pain med with the booze made the feelings much better, more pleasurable. The combination of the two drugs, known as the potentiation effect, kind of put a fire under my belt, and before long I was hitting it pretty often. This was where I started off with my recovery profile. I started examining all the negative aspect of how I was taking the drugs, and why I was getting into so much trouble. I started with looking at all the bad consequences, which covered many areas, such as overall health, mental stability, family relations, social relations, work-related history, and a host of other negative aspects dealing with the type of lifestyle I was programmed to live. I use my past history as a learning tool, in other words, what not to do, but what exactly to do. Those of you that are very involved with AA, CA, NA, etc., and you feel extremely comfortable with your self-help approach, please continue and do what you have to do, not what you are supposed to do. While no limit people, coined from Dr. Wayne Dyer, can generally solve most of the problems that confront them without being immobilized, like most ordinary folks, they go way beyond a simple acceptance of life as it is handed to them. The no-limit person believes very firmly that he has choices which can elevate him beyond being normal or like most other people. No-limit people look at life in a unique way, and because of this different vision they can see things very clearly in terms of choices which they can make, rather than seeing themselves as being trapped or otherwise unable to exercise control over their life situations. Your addiction profile outline will help you journey through your recovery. It will keep you on the right path as long as you follow it. Along the way on your journey through recovery, your path may be changed now and then, but it will be up to you to keep it on the right track. Beware, the journey is long, be wise, learn what to study and when to study, and finally, know that you can make it through recovery and be that no-limit person. By understanding everything's controlled by the brain, therefore, as you think, so shall you be. The no-limit person knows the recovery can be encouraged by understanding the mindfulness approach to personal growth. When you can fix your problems in the here and now, they will stay with you always. Now, you rewired your brain for addiction criteria, now you can rewire your brain away from addiction thinking. All you have to do is start thinking straight. All through this dialogue I will be telling you to beware, be wise and be there for yourself. You must understand that your mind, your subconscious comfort zone, cannot tell a difference between a real event happening and something you're just thinking about, like a daydream. You could daydream about getting high. To you it was nothing but a simple daydream, but to your mind it will take it as a real event happening. A simple little dream can make things real for you, thus, keeping your desire to use very much alive and well. Whether it's a night dream or a daydream, it makes no difference, you must learn how to control your thinking, in other words, think about what you're thinking about. Learn to do this and you may find your recovery moving along much easier. Now, let's go on to part 1. Your addiction thinking. Part 1, My Addiction Recovery Profile. Hello, Elton here. Now let's talk about how your thinking can get you in big trouble, also how your thinking controls your recovery. Addicts for many years have practiced their addiction on a regular routine day after day, year after year. So why when society or a professional tells the addict, you must stop all drug use, the addict simply denies the addiction or appears to just don't understand why he or she should stop all drug use. Taking the last statement into consideration, and the memory patterns of the addict which has been conditioned towards drug use, why would the addict think he or she is really doing anything wrong? First, information that does not fit is discounted. You decide you're clever and you have managed your life in proper order thus far. Learning anew is the most difficult, because there is nothing you can relate to by way of proving the new information. You search your mind and come up with nothing, because you cannot relate to it, it must be true. On the other hand, because you cannot relate to it, you simply discount the information and allow it to slip out of memory. In other words, you simply do not pay any attention to it. The addict just going into rehab has absolutely nothing else on his mind but normal addiction thinking criteria. It's not that he can't relate to the information, it's that he just doesn't want to hear about stopping all drug use. The addict's addiction thinking is all he's got to give or think about. I feel fear has much to do why I didn't want to pay any attention to what the person was telling me. The thought of not being able to drink or use again, left me shaking and very much afraid. The thought of not being able to use the drugs, well, it didn't set with me too well. This is one of the main reasons why addicts coming out of rehab have absolutely no idea how to go about setting up a recovery program. Sometimes it's not that they don't want to manage recovery issues, it's because when the instructions were given out through classroom discussions in rehab, they absolutely could not reason with not using and getting high. Encoding the new information was not done, and when it comes time for the addict to recall the information, there is nothing to recall, the addict simply doesn't remember the instructions. What he or she was taught simply cannot be remembered. There was no neurochemical match, so the information was not put into permanent storage. Many addicts have told me that during their rehab stay, they couldn't keep their mind on anything but getting rid of the withdrawal, or getting high. All they were doing was putting in the time, just waiting for rehab to be over and done. You may be wondering why I call the person in recovery a drug addict, even though all drug use has stopped. The recovering person is that drug addict until the person claims not to be that addict, in other words, instead of hi, I'm Mac, an alcoholic, to hi, I'm Mac, and that's all. When I announce the addict as he, it refers to both male and female, so take note. Another example, the drug addict upon entering recovery is told that he or she cannot use drugs anymore. I drank alcohol for over 25 years, got drunk at least every other day, or stayed drunk for several days at a time. They told me I couldn't drink anymore, they told me I couldn't get high anymore. It scared me, the fear was overwhelming, just the thought of not being able to get high anymore, well, I didn't like it at all. I found myself getting very angry at the instructor. Fear was kick-starting my addiction thinking, and I didn't like feeling afraid, not at all. I've been drinking and getting high for so long that the information just did not compute. I had no chemical match to where I could even begin to agree with them. After all, I was going up against a strong addiction habit that just would not allow me to think any other way but how to get high. Thus, I created an inner conflict of extreme fear and anger trying to match the information given to me. I kept blaming my addiction on my wife and kids, they were the ones causing my addiction problems. I didn't have any problems, the rest of society was the problem. Society just couldn't understand me. In reference to my way of thinking, I was doing nothing wrong. The new information was considered non-essential, and I simply discounted it because it did not match my already existing memory database, which was my habitual conditioned programmed pattern of thinking. You have to realize that you, the recovering person, have got a head full of addiction memories, that has to be changed, somehow. Really, the way the memories will be changed is up to you, and no one else. I hit rock bottom, emotionally I was a wreck, and was ready to stop using drugs. The information was what I really wanted to hear, but my mind could not comprehend the information because of my already programmed way of functioning. My biochemical makeup or chemical intelligence could not match not using drugs or drinking alcohol. It's not because I didn't want to stop using, it was because I couldn't mentally relate to not using. Because I could not relate to not using, the popular defense mechanism of denial took over. I, of course, due to chemical programming, still wanted and desired to get high to rid the physical and emotional pain I was suffering from at the time. People learn by way of matching the new with the old. If the new information has no neuromatch, it becomes difficult to learn and becomes distorted information. Basic common sense states, if you cannot match the encoded memory you have with behavior, thought, feeling, the new information is nothing more than just words that are running through your mind trying to find a home or a match. I'm sitting in group and the counselor or PhD is telling the group how to simply not use, and this information, because it's coming from an authority figure, is supposed to be the right information, but yet, I could not relate to the information with what memory I had. Drug abusing and using patterns of many years has become a permanent neurochemical program or pattern for me. I just could not relate to the new information. To tell the truth, I really don't think I wanted to relate to the new information anyway at this time of my recovery. Second, information that does not fit is distorted. Distortion is the backside of discounted, because we cannot relate to the information, it appears distorted, mixed up in a sense, or basically just makes no sense at all. Your brain just doesn't know what to do with the new information, it can't find a match, nothing to relate to, and in a sense, it's not encoded. Your chemical conditioning has absolutely nothing to match up with, thus the information becomes just words. Therefore, distorted information is very confusing and frustrating to comprehend. Because one cannot find a neuromatch, the memory recall or recognition involved with understanding is just not there. 3. Information that does not fit due to distortion is deflected. Your neurochemical makeup, your patterned way of thinking, behaving, feeling, showing emotion, expressing opinions, beliefs, and assumptions are all part of your permanent memory system. What we see, notice, attend to, and remember is in many ways determined by the beliefs, framework, and theories that we already have, rather than the other way around. Our daily observations hardly ever change our preconceptions. This is relevant because distressing beliefs such as I'm not as good as others, or others have stopped using drugs, or I can stop using drugs, will be just as resistant to change, and just as likely to be inaccurate, as other sorts of beliefs. Your mindset, your mental picture at the time will not allow new information in or be encoded because there is no match or place to put it, unless you go over the information many times in a repeated fashion. Then again, if you're not interested in the information, you will just discard it. In other words, you just won't pay any attention to it. There's an old saying, in one ear and out the other. That's exactly what happens to the information. The drug addict's chemical conditioning at the time will clearly dictate that the new information of just stop using does not compute. There is nothing to relate to simply because of habitual chemical learned patterns of feelings, behaviors, thoughts, and expressing emotions. Learning becomes reality when the new information is allowed to expand and grow to become knowledge that is permanently stored for future use and has a definite purpose for its existence. You don't have to be a psychologist or any professional to theorize. Humans make a habit of creating theories, mental assumptions, so to speak. In actuality, learning also depends on primarily how you feel at the moment. An addict in heavy withdrawal simply has no neuromatch with not using, mainly because of the way he or she feels. Memory is recalled using mental cues or triggers that create a match, or a close match. The journey through life is a learning adventure of never-ending aspects of what is real or not real. What is right or wrong, good or bad, all aspects of survival depend on learning how to survive. Without memory we could not survive. Why is change so hard, and why can't I just change what I want to change? Why sometimes do I get afraid or have a feeling of fear, when I have nothing to fear or be afraid of when the word change is mentioned? Here's something to think about: why can I easily remember the good times and not the bad times dealing with my past history? Why can't I remember those bad, sick, and crazy things that pertain to my drinking and abusing the pain medications? Take a baseball player for instance. Can the player become a professional just by watching the game being played? No. It's true one can learn how to play the game just by watching, but how does one become that professional? He becomes a professional by practicing the game of baseball, by repetitiously mastering the skills needed to perform well. When one starts a new job, that is a new experience for him, and let's suppose there is no prior experience working the job. How does one learn to do the job well? Humans learn to do things, remember things, by repetition and practice. They create the chemical intelligence needed to perform and master the job well. When information is encoded, placed into memory, and the information is recalled in a repetitious manner by constantly practicing what you have learned, it becomes a programmed chemical intelligence that can be used on an automatic basis. What creates many problems for the person is that the brain never shuts off unless you are dead. It is always recording information and placing that information where it belongs in your memory storage banks. This is the pitfalls of memory. This is why one may get a bad feeling and not know why, or one appears really not to know what you're talking about. Addicts don't like to feel bad, especially the feelings associated with withdrawal. Memory serves the addict well by allowing him or her to come up with multiple ways of not hurting because of withdrawal. Let's face it, the effects from the drug feels very good, and if you think for 1 minute the human system likes bad feelings, you're very mistaken. The pleasure system in the brain will assure you that the know-how to relieve the hurt and pain will be there. It's very easy for the addict to stay an addict, because of the human pleasure system. Human behavioral routine is the backbone for daily survival. We survive because mainly of habit. Habits have roots and will fight until their death. Death occurs with change. Deep down inside you may do something you know right well is wrong, like abusing drugs, but the powerful pull of habit will tell you to do it anyway, even though you know right well it is wrong. Habits are just habits. There are good habits and bad habits. And the human chemical system needs habit to control what has to be done. Human chemical intelligence has memory that is controlled by innate characteristics and practice over many years of experience. As the self-assessment is being done, you will find and notice all those nasty bad habits you created through the past years. Now that you have a way of finding them, you now can get rid of them by changing the processes of the nature of the habit. Many addicts believe that all they have to do after rehab is simply don't drink or use today. That's the easy part of recovery. The addict's got to clean house, so to speak, and get rid of all that junk he or she has in the swelled head sitting on their shoulders. But beware, there are some addicts that will take the chance, and say to himself, maybe I can get by with having just 1 beer, or 1 shot of heroin, or smoke 1 joint, and so on. Little do they know that it only takes one to mess things up. You're in recovery, now it's time to stop all the blaming on others for your drug addiction. Now it's time for you to realize that your wife, children, boss, or whatever, had absolutely nothing to do with you getting addicted to psychoactive drugs. Now it's time to say that big word, that you never said in a long time, I'm sorry. Sit down with your family, and look them straight in the face and tell them all just how sorry you are, that's if you can. If you can't tell them, I'm afraid the family may be in for some hard times. I found out through other addicts and my own experience with my family, that the family, most of the time is waiting for you to say how sorry you are. During you heavy using times, you were the boss, the big man of the house, that what you said was always right. Now it's time to throw all that junk away, and start thinking real for a change. Later on in the addiction profile I go over Dr. Joel C. Robertson's, one of my main references in the system, his 5 factors affecting stages of recovery, in Part 18, pages 183 to 194, in his book Help Yourself, a revolutionary alternative recovery program. If you manage to get there, I suggest you listen very close to what he has to say. It's an important part dealing with one's addiction profile. Now if you're ready and willing, let's go on to Part 2. Remember, everything's controlled by the brain, therefore, as you think so shall you be. And also remember, your way of thinking can really get you in trouble if you're not careful what you're thinking about. The professional model will tell you that triggers are your main cause of relapse. I say to that, no they're not. Your thinking is the main cause of relapse.